Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few minutes in our influencer segment brought to us by ogpay.com, we are featuring Raif Derrazi, an activist, a pro-natural bodybuilder, and a motivation to those who have struggled in life. Raif balances bodybuilding, speaking to his thousands of followers on social media, unfiltered about dating, wellness, and living with HIV. Acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, AIDS, is a chronic, potentially life-threatening condition caused by the human immunodeficiency virus HIV. By damaging your immune system, HIV interferes with your body's ability to fight infection and disease. Today, we are chatting all about how AIDS is still very much a thing. Discrimination is still very common. And for Raif and other HIV positive people, this is still going on, largely because of the 1980s AIDS epidemic, when those with the disease were essentially cast out of society. Much has changed about the treatment and management of the condition over the past 40 years. A ton comes with the misrepresentation of HIV, though, the stigma of dying, and one on emphasizing on a cure as a result, which makes people abandon the conversation. New data from UN AIDS on the global HIV response reveals that during the last 2 years of COVID-19 and other global crises, progress against the HIV pandemic has faltered. Resources have shrunk, and millions of lives are at risk as a result. Globally, the number of new infections dropped only 3.5% between the years 2020 and 2021. That's the smallest annual decline in new HIV infections since 2016. These data show the global AIDS response in severe danger. Faltering progress meant approximately 1.5 million new infections occurred last year. That's over 1 million more than the global targets. These AIDS pandemic numbers took a life every minute on average in 2021, with 650,000 AIDS deaths despite effective HIV treatment and tools to prevent, detect, and treat infections. And here to chat some more and give us his personal insight is the amazing Raif Derrazi. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Well, hello, darling. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you
And
so
you
much.
did your research.
Absolutely. Listen, we all have to do our research, and we have to do our part to give you a voice and the very many that AIDS has affected. Now, you were diagnosed with HIV and AIDS soon after, back in 2012, and you felt powerless. What ultimately changed your perspective, and how has living with AIDS changed in the past decade?
I would say initially it was education. It was an incredibly steep learning curve because initially I thought I was going to be dead in 2 to 3 years. So immediately I was like, what do I do with the rest of my life? This is it. It's over. It's done. And I quickly had to learn that that wasn't the case at all anymore. Medication has come so far. We've made so many advancements that now I can live a full, long, and healthy life with HIV.
And, at a moment when international solidarity and a surge of funding is most needed, too many high income countries are cutting back aid, and resources for global health are under serious threat. The HIV response is in low and middle income countries is about 8 billion short of the amount needed by 2025. Do you think it's still possible for leaders to get the response back on track? And what do you think needs to change in your point of view?
Of course it's possible. It's just political will, really, and that has to do with us, the people, and making sure that our representatives are giving us what we are demanding of them, and that comes from having visibility and education. If we have role models, if we have visibility, then we know that the community exists and that they are like people like me, and we're just all trying to live together in peace and be healthy and happy. And so it's really important that people who, especially living with HIV, are open and honest about it and advocates for it for everyone.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, look, this definitely requires both national action and international solidarity. I mean, the proven package for success includes community led, people centered services, the upholding of really everyone's human rights, the removal of punitive and discriminatory laws, and tackling of stigma. Right? That's really important.
That's
But
right.
really, right now, we're facing a surge in women and girls. So the empowerment of girls and women faced with HIV and AIDS, really, and equal access to treatment, including new health technologies and health services, education, and social protection for all across the board. That's what I advocate for as a mom, because nobody should have a lesser advantage to fight this based on age, sex, race, or any of the above, right?
That's right. You know, I just came from the International AIDS Conference in Montreal. I believe you spent some time in Montreal yourself.
I was born there. Yes.
Yeah. So, and I was speaking to a woman who advocates for young adolescent women in Africa, and she told me a staggering number that just in South Africa alone, she said at the end of the day today, 1,000 young girls will be diagnosed with HIV, which is mind blowing. I had
Mind
no
blowing.
idea the impact that it was having on women.
Huge.
Specifically. Yeah.
Yes, and efforts to ensure that all people living with HIV are accessing life-saving anti-retroviral treatment are
Mhm.
faltering. It's not like it's on the up, on the upscale, on the upside of the numbers.
Yeah.
It's really, really kind of declining here, and the number of people on HIV treatment grew more slowly, Raif, in 2021 than it has in over a decade. And while 3/4 of all people living with HIV have access to antiretroviral treatment, approximately 10 million people do not, and only half, and that's 52% of children living with HIV, have access to life-saving medicine. So the gap in HIV treatment coverage between children and adults is increasing rather than narrowing. So yeah, I mean, what do you say to that?
Yeah.
I'm not living with this, but you are. But these are frightening numbers.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about access. But the insidious part of that is that even when there's access, stigma is preventing access because people are afraid to go out and to get tested. They don't want to know their status. They're afraid to go get medicine. It's that anonymity factor. And if you're outed and people around you know, there could be real and present danger if people know that you have HIV. And there's that intense stigma, or you could just be ostracized in your society from your work. You could get kicked out of your country. It goes on. It's
It goes
crazy.
on. What's the hardest thing about living with AIDS?
The stigma, for
The
sure.
stigma. And the biggest
It's the stigma.
misconception? What's the biggest misconception?
That I can pass it on to you. So there's a worldwide campaign that's being promoted right now called U equals U. Undetectable equals untransmittable. So when you're on effective treatment for long enough, it suppresses your viral load, how much virus you have in your free flowing in your body, to a point where it's undetectable. Basically, it's not there. And so when that happens, you can no longer sexually transmit the virus to anyone else. That's a huge statement. That's a huge scientific finding that the CDC is on board with. The US, the Canadian government recently also is on board, the WHO. All around the world are endorsing this, and people just don't know about it. Or when they find out, they don't believe it. They're skeptical.
Yeah. And how does really AIDS inhibit you if you're not at the forefront of all of these antiviral drugs?
You mean if you're not taking it?
Right. I mean, if you're not really on top because you don't have access to it, or because you're in denial, or for whatever reason, I mean, it will start to inhibit you. But what's the number one red flag?
I mean, that's the point, is that you're gonna have symptoms, and that you are at that point, you're able to transmit it to other people. And that even without a cure, I mean, the cure is coming down the pipeline. It's gonna happen. It's just a matter of time. But even without the cure, we can stop the epidemic simply by getting everyone to undetectable viral loads.
Yeah.
Because then they can't transmit it. Then it's just a chronic, manageable condition.
Exactly. So what advice really do you have for people living with the virus, if you could say something to them?
Be your own advocate. No one is going to fight for you the way that you're going to fight for yourself. Treat yourself like you're your own religion. Your body is your temple. So first, you want to focus on you. Don't worry about what other people are doing. Don't worry about your family, your friends, where you live, and how all of that is going to play out. First, you have to take care of you, and you have to take care of your health. And that starts with loving yourself, taking your ARVs, listening to your doctor, and just being kind to yourself. Be kind. Don't judge yourself. Don't criticize yourself.
You are amazing. Thank you for doing what you do, and thank you for so much for coming on to the show and
Thank
really
you.
spreading love and light, and just being a great advocate and a great soul. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Guys, you have to check out Raif Derrazi. He's all over social media, very active, there to support you, there to support really anybody. He's just that bright light. Check him out, Raif Derrazi, RAFDARRAZI. That was our influencer segment brought to us by OG Pay. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.